Hi. On our weekly workshops, we like to talk about various topics that our VCOs find critical for their QBR process. One of the things we spoke about this week was on segmentation. So, as we first start to establish a process, everyone's concerned with, getting their quarterly business reviews in. When the reality of it is we can't get to all of our clients quarterly. But not only that, not all of our clients need us quarterly, and doesn't serve both of our businesses well. So what we need to do is determine the cadence which is appropriate for each client, best for our business, best for their business. So let's take a look at some ideas around that notion of segmenting our client base. So there are lots of variables. We're going to name a few, but there are many more out there. So do not for a second think that there's only one way to categorize your clients. These are just some ideas to get you thinking. We have MRR, ARR. So absolutely the value that the clients bring in to your MSP. The size. This can be determined by the number of endpoints or maybe the number of users. Lots of different ways to look at that variable. The influence or reference value of a client. Maybe it's a small client, but they're very influential in your community. And so they provide a lot more value to your company than if they had a higher MRR. Maybe a client that's new to a vertical. Again, if you're trying to break into a new space, maybe that's something you want to think about in terms of what they bring to your MSP. Effort. How much work does it take to support this particular client? Opportunity. Is there a lot of opportunity that you see moving forward with this client? What are their technology needs or dependencies, right? Are they heavily invested in technology on a day-to-day basis? Is it a service industry that is a need to have, but if they're down for a couple hours, there's less critical need? And how about what industry they're in? Are there regulatory compliance audits that they need to have, HIPAA, NIST, et cetera, that you may need to consider? If we take a look at all of these variables, that would be a lot of things to consider in order to rank each client. So we tried to condense that into a couple ideas so that we could really refine it into a quick way to identify the cadence that would be appropriate for this client. A couple other consultants in the industry talk about for every $1,000 of ARR, you would meet with them that many times a year. Some talk about the number of users or seats that you sell to, and that might help you differentiate. This is another idea. Again, every MSP is very unique, but we think this is a simple way to identify where your clients may fall on the spectrum and how to scale the process. So when we look at the variables, we could really break them into two different categories, one around value and one around complexity. So if you imagine ranking your clients based on MRR and then giving them another value around complexity, we could really think about a scale. And so we're going to put these on the XY axis. And if we take a look, so from left to right, we're going to put our lowest MRR or value clients to the left, our highest MRR to the right. From bottom to top, least amount of complexity to most amount of complexity. Now, we just mentioned 8 variables, yet we only broke it down into 2 different categories. So you need to decide for your MSP sort of a rubric on which to score. So if you're going to rank something kind of from 1 to 5 for complexity, you can, kind of create rules on how you're going to keep that consistent for yourself. And from lower value to higher value, if you're going with lower to higher MRR, then you take whatever your typical range is. So there's no one industry set here. You just do what is appropriate for your MSP. So let's take a look at some example clients. If we have one client that's greater than 5% of our revenue, we would be in major jeopardy, our company, if we lost that client. So for sure, we want to put them top right, high value client. Let's look at maybe a 4,000 MRR, but they're growing. So they're moving up in value and we know they're moving up in complexity as well. So they'll land in that top quadrant, but not quite as high up. And we start placing all of our clients in our quadrants, including the small shops that are stable, but maybe there's opportunity moving forward. Maybe we have some break fix clients down here that we feel like if we show them the value of a of a QBR or a business review, since we're not going to do them quarterly, that they would see the value of a managed services product, and they may move into your managed services contract. And we really work our way through our client base, populating the grid, determining in which quadrant each of the clients lie. So then we really need to make a decision on how we look at the clients in order to segment them and break them into the appropriate cadence. And this is where we draw on some diagonal lines to really break apart our client base. And let's take a look at those three in the upper right-hand corner of the top quadrant. Those would be the clients that we want to meet with, maybe even weekly or monthly, right? They're high dollar value, high complexity. Then the big wide spectrum in the center, those are the QBRs. And that's why they're called quarterly business reviews, because the largest bulk of the clients may fall into this category. It definitely takes up the most space on the graph. Then we move to the lower quadrant and we look at semi-annual or annual. Again, those break fix clients might land in the annual. We want to maybe start with something with them to see if we can grow them into a larger client as we move forward. Now, this is certainly not a perfect fit. You absolutely may have a client that's in crisis or you're fearful of churn and you might want to move them from quarterly to monthly while things check back in. Maybe there was a CSAT issue that you need to address. You need to have a regular cadence. Absolutely. During onboarding, you may say, okay, I'm going to meet with you weekly or monthly for 8 weeks, 3 months, whatever your policy is, while we get you set and squared away. And once you feel that they're stable, then decide what quadrant they would fall into and what cadence would be appropriate for them. Remember, the really large clients probably have staff to support coming to those meetings, getting executive leadership to the table, and think about who you bring from your side of the house as well. The smaller clients probably don't have the same amount of time. They're wearing multiple hats. So they will be just as happy with an annual review. They're getting their needs met without having to take additional time that they see not as valuable. So when you're bringing value to these business reviews, whether they are annual or monthly or weekly or quarterly, you can really support the client that supports their business, and that's best for your business as well. So some things to consider, in addition to how frequently you're going to meet with them, is what type of business review would you do? Now, we can't always do on-site these days, but when we can, still, who warrants an on-site meeting? Who warrants a Zoom conference? And are there some things that you could maybe follow up in a cadence with an email? Sometimes an annual face-to-face can be followed up with 3 quarterly email types of conversations that make you much more efficient and profitable, and again, get everybody what they need. What topics you should present? Absolutely. You want to take a look at the assessments that you want to bring to the table and an appropriate cadence. Maybe not all of assessments happen at every business review. So you really want to work on scheduling those, along with, of course, asset lists, user lists, your budget forecast, projects, etc. If you want to have further conversations around this, we are always happy to talk. But we really wanted to give you a bit of a framework for how you can segment your client base and make sure they're getting the business review, technology business review, strategic business review, and maybe even quarterly business review that they deserve. Thanks so much. Happy life cycling.